I was 43 years old when I learned what a coward looked like. Found him staring back at me in a mirror. Not in Silver Creek, where it mattered, but 60 miles north, in a cold camp under stars that didn't care about badges or promises or the things a man tells himself so he can sleep at night. My name is Thomas McKenna. I wore a sheriff's star for 18 years in Silver Creek, Colorado. That's a railroad junction town if you don't know it. 300 souls when the census man came through, 400 on paydays when the track crews got their wages and needed somewhere to spend them. I'm 68 now, retired 12 years, live quiet in a town you've never heard of, in a house too big for one man. Most evenings I sit on this porch and watch the sun go down over mountains that have been here longer than any of us will ever be. But tonight I'm going to tell you about Silver Creek, not the story folks tell, not the legend that got printed in the territorial newspapers, the truth, the one that kept me awake for 15 years. The one about a woman named Clara Donnelly and the night she carried the law better than I ever did. You want to know about real law on the frontier? Let me pour us some whiskey first. This here's a good bottle. 20 years old, smooth as a promise. There's a story about whiskey like this, about what it can do in the right hands, told by the right voice, to the right desperate men. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Silver Creek in the summer of 1884 was the kind of place that made you believe the frontier could be tamed. Main Street ran north to south, lined with buildings that had weathered 10 hard winters and were still standing. That meant something out there, meant the people who built them weren't just passing through. Clara Donnelly's saloon sat right in the middle of that street. 2 stories, weathered pine, a sign that read Donnelly's in paint that Clara touched up herself every spring. Inside, the bar ran the length of the west wall. Bottles on shelves behind it caught the lamplight like amber promises. Upstairs was where Clara and her daughter Sarah lived. 2 rooms, small but clean. A life carved out of what was left after grief took its cut. I knew that saloon better than my own office. Spent more time there too, if I'm being honest. Not drinking, you understand. Clara didn't allow drunkenness, not from me, not from anyone. She'd pour you 2 drinks, maybe 3 if you'd had a hard day. After that you got coffee and the suggestion that home was waiting. But the saloon was where the town gathered, where ranchers came to settle disputes over fence lines, where the railroad men came after a week laying track in the heat, where Maggie Chen from the general store came to talk business with Eli Cooper, the blacksmith, where Reverend Stone came because even preachers get lonely. Clara made that happen, made a saloon feel like something more than a place to drink, made it feel like the center of something worth protecting. I should tell you about Clara as she was then, 35 years old, though the frontier had a way of making years feel longer. Dark hair she kept pinned up, hands weathered from 15 years of work, eyes that saw more than she let on. She'd been running that saloon since her husband John died. That was 1874, 10 years before the night I'm telling you about. John Donnelly had been a foreman on the railroad crew. Good man. Careful man, the kind who checked the scaffolding twice before sending men up to work. He died anyway, not in a fall, but from the injuries he got in one. Took him 5 years to die, hurting a little more each day, until finally his body gave up what his will wouldn't. I was there at the end. He called me to his bedside. Clara was there too, holding his hand. He looked at me with eyes that already belonged more to the next world than this one. "Thomas," he said, "you watch over them, Clara and Sarah. This town can be hard on a woman alone." I promised, right there with Clara pretending she wasn't listening, with death in the room like an unwelcome guest. I promised I'd be the law that protected them. For 10 years, I kept that promise. Clara never asked me to keep it, never reminded me. She just went about building a life, raised Sarah, ran the saloon, became something the town needed without ever saying that was what she aimed to do. I learned later how much she did. Little things, big things, things she never mentioned, but I'm getting ahead of myself again. Late August 1884. The kind of heat that settles in the afternoon and doesn't lift until well after dark. Dust on everything, even inside where you'd swept an hour before. The mountains to the west shimmered like they weren't quite real. I remember that morning because it was the last normal morning. The last time I walked down Silver Creek's main street and thought I knew what the day would bring. I stopped at Maggie Chen's general store first. Maggie had been in Silver Creek almost as long as I had. She and her late husband had come from San Francisco, carrying dreams of a store that would serve the railroad workers. He'd died of pneumonia the second winter. She stayed. "Sheriff," she said when I walked in. She was arranging canned goods on a shelf. "You hear about the strangers?" "What strangers?" "3 men. Rode in yesterday afternoon, didn't buy anything, just looked around, asked questions." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not quite alarm, just attention. "What kind of questions?" "About the town, about when the railroad crews get paid, about—" She paused. "About Clara." "What about Clara? If she owned the saloon outright, if she had family, if the sheriff was around much." I should have listened closer to that tightness in my chest. "Where are they now?" I asked. "Don't know. Haven't seen them this morning." Maggie looked at me with eyes that had seen too much trouble in her life to dismiss worry. Something felt wrong, Thomas. The way they looked at things, like they were measuring. "I'll keep watch," I said. That's what I told her. Keeping watch. Like that was enough. I found Clara at the saloon around noon. She was wiping down the bar, getting ready for the evening crowd. Sunlight came through the windows in long beams, catching the dust in the air. "Maggie told me about some strangers," I said. Clara didn't stop wiping. "I saw them, yesterday. They sat in the corner for an hour. Didn't drink much. Didn't talk much. Just watched." "You worried?" She looked up at me then. "Clara had a way of looking at you that made you feel like she could see past whatever you were showing the world. Should I be? Probably nothing. Drifters passing through." "Probably," she said, but I could hear the doubt. I should have stayed in town that day. Should have told the next part of this story to go to hell, but I didn't. Around 3 that afternoon, a rider came to my office. Young fellow, worked for the Brennan Ranch north of town. He was out of breath, his horse lathered. "Sheriff McKenna, we got cattle thieves. Mr. Brennan sent me. Says he saw 3 men running off a dozen head last night. Tracked them north toward the high country." Cattle thieves. Common enough problem. Usually young men too lazy to work, too foolish to realize stealing cattle was a hanging offense if you got caught. 3 men? I asked. "Yes, sir. Mr. Brennan wants the law up there. Says he'll deputize his own men if you don't come." I looked at the papers on my desk, looked out the window at Silver Creek's quiet street. Thought about Maggie's worry and Clara's doubt and 3 strangers who'd asked too many questions. Then I thought about how tired I was, how long it had been since anything really bad had happened in Silver Creek, how much I wanted to believe this was just routine. Just another week in a town where the law mostly meant breaking up fights between drunk railroad workers. I wanted to go, wanted the excuse, wanted a few days away from the weight of the star on my chest. So I took it. "Tell Mr. Brennan I'll be there by evening," I said. "I'll bring the law." The rider nodded and left. I started packing my saddlebags, told myself I'd be back in 3 days, told myself Silver Creek would be fine, told myself a lot of things that made it easier to do what I wanted to do instead of what I should have done. I stopped at Clara's saloon on my way out of town. She was serving coffee to Eli Cooper and talking about his new horseshoes, the kind of conversation that makes a place feel like home. "Clara," I said, "got to head north. Cattle thieves at the Brennan Ranch." She looked at me with those eyes that saw too much. "How long?" 3 days, maybe 4. "Those strangers are still in town, Thomas." "I know, but Eli's here, Reverend Stone, plenty of good men. You'll be fine." She didn't argue. Clara wasn't the arguing type. She just nodded and said, "Be careful." I touched the brim of my hat, turned to leave. "Thomas," she said. I looked back. "Thank you for keeping watch all these years." I should have heard what she wasn't saying, should have heard the goodbye in it. "Always," I said. Then I walked out of that saloon, climbed on my horse, Rode north toward cattle thieves that didn't matter half as much as what I was leaving behind. I was 5 miles out of Silver Creek when 3 riders came up the southern road. I know that now. Learned it later when I pieced together what happened. 3 men. Professional. Patient. They'd been waiting for the sheriff to leave. They'd asked their questions, made their plans, sent a young ranch hand with a story about cattle thieves to a tired lawman who wanted to believe it. And I'd given them exactly what they wanted. I gave them Silver Creek without a badge to stop them. Gave them Clara without the law to protect her. Gave them the night they'd been waiting for. I broke my promise to a dead man, and I didn't even know it yet. The sun was setting behind me as I rode north, long shadows stretching across the grass. The kind of evening that makes you think about how big the world is and how small we are in it. I made camp that night under stars that looked like scattered diamonds, built a fire, made coffee. Thought about how quiet it was out there, away from town, how peaceful. 60 miles south in Silver Creek, Clara Donnelly was closing up her saloon. 3 men were watching from across the street, waiting. And the night that would change everything was about to begin. But I didn't know any of that yet. I was just a tired sheriff drinking coffee under stars, telling myself I'd made the right choice. Sometimes the worst thing about a mistake isn't making it. It's the moment before, when you still have time to choose differently, when you still have time to keep your promise. I had that moment. I chose wrong. And tomorrow, when I tell you what happened next, you'll understand why I've been carrying that choice for 15 years. Why I'm sitting on this porch at 68, drinking whiskey that tastes like regret. Why I finally need to tell the truth about the night Clara Donnelly showed me what real law looks like. But that's tomorrow's story. Tonight, I'm still riding north, still believing I made the right choice, still 60 miles from learning what a coward looks like in a mirror. 1127 Architected Narrative Structure, Balancing Character Development, Atmospheric Tension, and Plot Progression. Architected Narrative Structure, Balancing Character Development, Atmospheric Tension, and Plot Progression. The journalist who's sitting across from me now, he's young, maybe 25, got that look in his eyes like the world still makes sense to him, like good and bad are easy to tell apart. He's been writing in his notebook while I talk. Now he stops, looks up. "So you just left?" he says. "Even after the warnings?" I pour more whiskey into both our glasses. The bottle's half empty now. Good whiskey doesn't last long when you're telling hard truths. "I left," I say. "And before you ask why I'm telling you this, making myself look like a fool, it's because Clara deserves better than the legend, deserves someone to tell what really happened. What did happen. I'm getting there. But you need to understand the day before. Need to see what I didn't see because I wasn't there to see it." The journalist nods, writes something, waits. I close my eyes, try to picture it the way folks told me later, the way I've imagined it 1,000 times, lying awake in the dark. Clara woke before dawn that morning, same as she had for 15 years. The room above the saloon caught the first light through a window that faced east. She lay there a moment, listening to Sarah breathing in the other bed. Her daughter was 17 now, almost a woman, almost ready to leave. That thought sat heavy on Clara's chest every morning lately. She rose quietly, dressed in the dim light. A simple cotton dress, practical, nothing fancy. The frontier didn't have much use for fancy. Downstairs, the saloon smelled like tobacco and whiskey, and the wood smoke that never quite left the walls. Clara moved through the familiar dark to light the lamps, started the stove, put coffee on to boil. This was her ritual, her peace. The hour before the world woke up and needed things from her. She heard footsteps on the stairs, Sarah, earlier than usual. "Morning, Mama," Sarah said. She was already dressed. Had that look on her face Clara had come to recognize. The look that meant a difficult conversation was coming. "Coffee's almost ready," Clara said. They sat at one of the tables, waited for the coffee. The silence between them wasn't comfortable anymore, hadn't been for months. "There's a theater troupe in Denver," Sarah finally said. "They're looking for seamstresses, costume work. I wrote to them." Clara's hands stilled on her cup, When? 3 weeks ago. They wrote back yesterday. They'll take me on. Denver's a long way. I know. Dangerous for a young woman alone. I won't be alone. Maggie's niece is going too. We'd share a room. Clara looked at her daughter, saw John in the shape of her face, saw herself in the determination in those eyes, saw a future that didn't include this saloon, this town, this life Clara had built from grief and stubbornness. You've already decided, Clara said. I want your blessing. That's different from asking permission. Sarah reached across the table, took her mother's hand. Mama, I love you. I love this town, but I can't breathe here. Every day feels the same. I want more. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to say that safety mattered more than dreams, that the world outside Silver Creek wasn't kind to young women with ambitions, that she needed Sarah here, needed something to wake up for besides pouring whiskey and keeping the peace. But she'd raised Sarah to be strong, to want things, to believe she deserved more than just surviving. When? Clara asked. 2 weeks. The troop starts rehearsals September 1st. Clara nodded, squeezed Sarah's hand. Then we have 2 weeks. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You're not angry? I'm terrified, but not angry. Clara managed to smile. Your father would be proud. You're braver than either of us ever were. They sat there as the sun came up, as the light filled the saloon and turned the dust motes into something almost beautiful, as the world outside started to wake. Neither of them knew it was one of their last peaceful mornings. By mid-morning, Clara had the saloon ready for the day. She was outside sweeping the porch when she saw them, 3 men on horseback, riding slow down the main street. Not drifting, not hurrying, just looking. The one in front was lean, maybe 30 years old, had a way of sitting his horse that spoke of long miles and hard living. His hat was pulled low, but Clara could see his face when he turned. Sharp features, eyes that calculated. The other 2 flanked him. One older, broader in the shoulders, one younger with the reckless energy of a man trying to prove something. They stopped in front of Maggie's store, dismounted, went inside. Clara kept sweeping, but she watched. 10 minutes later, they came out. Didn't buy anything that she could see. They stood on the porch of the store, looking around. The lean one pointed at the saloon, said something to his brothers. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. They mounted up, rode past the saloon without stopping. The lean one touched his hat to Clara, a mockery of politeness. She watched them ride to the edge of town, watched them stop and look back. Then they rode out south, toward the hills. You felt it then? The journalist asks me. The danger? Clara did, I say. She told me later she knew right then, something about the way they moved, the way they looked at things, like they were sizing up a job. But she didn't what? Run? Call for the sheriff who wasn't there? Clara had survived 15 years in Silver Creek by trusting her instincts, but not panicking. She watched. She waited. She prepared. I take another drink. Continue. That afternoon, Clara found Eli Cooper at his blacksmith shop. The forge was going, heat shimmering the air. Eli was a big man, 45 years old, with hands scarred from a lifetime of working hot metal. Eli, Clara said, you see those 3 strangers this morning? He set down his hammer, wiped sweat from his forehead. Saw them. Didn't like the look of them. Me neither. Eli looked at her. They'd known each other 12 years now. He owed Clara his life, though they didn't talk about it. Back when he'd been drinking himself to death, back when his wife had left him, Clara had been the one who'd pulled him back from the edge. She'd done it simply. Hired his wife to help in the saloon. Given Eli a choice, get sober or lose her forever. He'd chosen right, stopped drinking, won his wife back, became the man he'd been trying to be all along. Sheriff McKenna left this morning, Eli said. Cattle thieves up north. I know. You want me to stay close? Me and some of the boys? Clara considered, thought about what it meant to show fear, thought about what it meant to ignore warning signs. Not yet, she said, but if those men come back, I might need you. You need me, I'll be there. You know that. Clara nodded, walked back to the saloon. She didn't know it yet, but that simple exchange had just saved her life, had set in motion the thing that would matter most when the moment came. Community. Trust. The debts people owe to those who saw them at their worst and helped anyway. The brothers came back at sunset. Clara was in the saloon, doing the accounts in her ledger. The evening crowd hadn't arrived yet. Just her and the lamplight, and the numbers that told the story of another week survived. The door opened. She looked up. All three of them. They walked in like they owned the place. Boots heavy on the wooden floor. The lean one, she'd learn later his name was Silas Harrison, smiled at her. "Evening, ma'am," he said. "Here you serve the finest whiskey in Silver Creek." Clara closed her ledger, stood. "I serve good whiskey to paying customers." "Oh, we'll pay." Silas approached the bar. His brothers spread out, one to each side, flanking. "Question is, how much?" "Same as everyone, 2 bits a glass." "Seems reasonable." Silas leaned against the bar. "You run this place alone?" "I manage." "Must be hard. Woman alone, running a business, raising a daughter." He said it casual. But Clara heard the threat underneath. "I manage," she said again. "Where's the sheriff? Heard there was law in this town." "North, on business." "Shame. Would have liked to meet him. See what kind of law you got here." Silas looked around the empty saloon. "Seems like you're without protection tonight." Clara's heart was beating hard now, but her hands stayed steady. "I have protection. This whole town looks after its own." "That so?" The younger brother laughed. "Don't see nobody here but you." Clara met Silas's eyes, held them. "You boys planning to drink, or just planning to talk?" For a long moment nobody moved. Then Silas smiled. "Just talk, for now, getting to know the town. We'll be back for that drink, though, real soon." They turned, walked out. Clara stood behind the bar, hands gripping the wood, listening to their boots on the porch, their horses moving away. She went to the window, watched them ride to the edge of town again. Watched them stop, make camp. They weren't leaving. They were waiting. That night, Clara did something she hadn't done in 10 years. After Sarah went to bed, after the last customers left, Clara went to the back storeroom, moved aside a crate of bottles, pulled up a loose floorboard. Inside was a gun. John's gun. A Colt revolver he'd carried during his railroad days. Clara lifted it out. It was heavier than she remembered, cold. She checked the cylinder, still loaded, but the powder was old. 10 years old. She didn't even know if it would fire. She sat there on the storeroom floor, holding a gun she didn't know how to use, trying to figure out how to protect her daughter from 3 men who'd made their intentions clear without saying a word. The gun wasn't the answer. She knew that. But she didn't know what was. "You want to know something?" I say to the journalist. Clara told me later she almost left that night, almost woke Sarah up, packed what they could carry, and ran, just abandoned everything and disappeared into the dark. Why didn't she? Because of what she saw when she went upstairs. I pause. Pour more whiskey. The bottle's almost empty now. Sarah was asleep in her bed. The lamplight from downstairs caught her face. She looked young, peaceful, dreaming about Denver probably, about theater costumes and a bigger life. Clara stood in the doorway, watching her daughter breathe. If they ran, Sarah would never forgive her, would never understand, would think her mother was a coward who gave up everything at the first sign of trouble. And what would Clara be teaching her? That when dangerous men come, you run, that you abandon what you've built, that you let fear win? No, Clara had built this saloon from nothing, had raised a daughter alone, had become something this town depended on. 15 years of work, 15 years of proving she could survive anything. She wasn't giving that up. Not to 3 men who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. She would find a way. She had to. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark saloon thinking. She thought about John, about the promises they'd made when they were young, quick, and foolish, about the life they'd planned that never came. She thought about Sheriff McKenna, about the promise he'd made to a dying man, about how he meant well, but he wasn't here. She thought about Eli and Maggie and Reverend Stone And all the others. Good people. But would they fight for her? Really fight, risk their lives when it came down to it? She thought about Sarah. Always Sarah, the reason for everything. The girl who wanted to leave but needed to leave safely. Needed to go into the world believing her mother was strong. Sometime near dawn, Clara's eyes fell on the shelf behind the bar. The bottles there, all the different kinds. The cheap whiskey and the good whiskey, and in the corner, gathering dust, the bottle John had bought the day they were married. They'd never opened it. He'd said they'd drink it when they built something worth celebrating. Then he died. And Clara kept it. Not out of sentiment, just kept it. 20 years old now. Worth something probably. But more than that, a story. An idea began to form. Fragile as spider silk. Dangerous as fire. But it was all she had. By the time the sun came up, Clara had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It required luck and timing and the kind of desperate courage that comes when you're out of options. But it was something. She made coffee, waited for Sarah to wake, tried to act normal. "You all right, Mama?" Sarah asked at breakfast. "You look tired. Didn't sleep well, too hot. Those men who came in yesterday, they worried you." Clara looked at her daughter, saw that Sarah wasn't a child anymore, saw that she deserved some truth. "Yes," Clara said, "they worried me. Should we tell someone? Get help?" "I've got help. Eli, the others, we'll be fine." "You sure?" Clara reached across the table, took Sarah's hand. "I've survived 15 years in this town. Survived worse than 3 strangers trying to scare me. I'll survive this too." She said it with confidence she didn't feel. But sometimes courage is just fear that's learned to lie convincingly. The journalist sets down his pen, looks at me. "She was planning something," he says. "Even then." "She was thinking," I correct him. "That's different. Clara didn't have a master plan. She had instincts, and a bottle of old whiskey, and the knowledge that those men were coming back. That's all. But the story about the cursed bottle, I'm getting to that. But you need to understand. Clara didn't wake up that morning knowing what she'd do. She just knew she couldn't run. Couldn't fight with guns, had to find another way. I stand. Walk to the edge of the porch. The sun's almost down now. The mountains are turning purple. "You ever been scared?" I asked the journalist. "Really scared? Not startled or worried, but the kind of scared that makes your bones feel hollow?" I don't think so." Clara was that scared, all day, while she served coffee and smiled at customers and pretended everything was normal. While those 3 men stayed camped at the edge of town, visible to anyone who looked. While the hours ticked toward evening and she knew they'd come. I turned back to him. That's courage, but I say. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to keep moving when fears got you by the throat. Evening came to Silver Creek like a slow breath out. Clara lit the lamps in the saloon, arranged the glasses, put the special bottle, John's bottle, where she could reach it easily. Sarah came downstairs wearing her good dress. "I'm going to Maggie's. She's teaching me a new stitch for the costumes." Clara wanted to say no, wanted to keep Sarah close, but sending her away might be safer. "Be back before dark," Clara said. "I will." Sarah kissed her mother's cheek, left. Clara stood alone in the saloon. Eli came in first, then 3 railroad workers, then Reverend Stone, the usual evening crowd, gathering without knowing they were gathering for a reason. Clara served them, talked, listened, kept one eye on the door. As the sun touched the mountains, she saw them. 3 riders, coming up the main street, slow, deliberate, coming to the saloon. Clara's hands tightened on the bar, but her face stayed calm. Eli caught her eye, saw something there. Stood from his table casually, moved closer to the bar. The door swung open. Silas Harrison walked in first, his brothers behind him. They looked around at the occupied tables, at the men who'd gone quiet, watching. "Evening, ma'am," Silas said. "Told you we'd be back for that drink." Clara nodded. 3 whiskeys, then, the finest you've got." Silas approached the bar. "We've been thinking about prices. 2 bits seems high for a town without a sheriff, for a woman without protection." The room was silent now, every man watching. "Prices are what they are," Clara said quietly. "See, I think you don't understand the situation." Silas leaned close. "We're not asking. We're telling. You're going to pour us your best whiskey, and you're going to do it for free. Call it insurance against trouble." Clara felt the moment balance on a knife's edge. This was it. The moment she'd been preparing for all day. She reached for a bottle. "Not the special one, not yet." "Let me get this straight," she said. "You want free whiskey because you're threatening me?" "Threatening?" Silas smiled. "No, ma'am, just explaining how things are going to be." The younger brother's hand moved to his gun, just resting there. A reminder. Clara looked at that hand, looked at the men watching, looked at Eli, tense and ready. Then she looked back at Silas Harrison. "No," she said. One word, simple, final. The temperature in the room dropped. "No," Silas said softly, dangerously. "You want whiskey, you pay. You want to threaten me, you can try. But I'm not giving you anything for free. Not tonight. Not ever." For a long moment nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Silas laughed. But there was no humor in it. "You got courage, I'll give you that. Stupid courage. But courage." He straightened. "We'll be back tomorrow night. And you're going to think real hard about what you want to happen. To you, to that pretty daughter of yours." He said it casual, like mentioning the weather. Clara's blood went cold, but her voice stayed steady. "Get out of my saloon." Silas touched his hat, mocking. "Tomorrow night, ma'am. Have our whiskey ready." They turned, walked out. The door swung shut. For 3 heartbeats, silence. Then Eli was at the bar. "Clara, you can't. They'll come back with guns." "I know." Clara's hands were shaking now that it was over. She gripped the bar to still them. "I know, Eli. That's why I need you. All of you. Tomorrow night." Reverend Stone stood. "What are you planning?" Clara looked at the special bottle, the dusty glass, the amber liquid inside. "I'm planning," she said slowly, "to give them exactly what they asked for." "I don't understand," Eli said. Clara picked up the bottle, looked at it, thought about John, about promises, about the stories we tell to survive. "You will," she said, "tomorrow night. But I need everyone here. I need this room full. I need—" She paused, looked at Eli, at Reverend Stone, at the railroad workers. "I need you to trust me." "We trust you," Eli said without hesitation. The others nodded. Clara set the bottle down. "Then tomorrow night, we'll see what courage really means." I stopped talking. The journalist is writing frantically. The sun's gone down now. Stars coming out. "That's where I'll leave it tonight," I say. "You understand now?" She had one day to prepare for 3 armed men who'd threatened her daughter, one day to turn whiskey and words into something that could save her life. And she did it? You'll hear tomorrow, but yes, she did it. Clara Donnelly, with nothing but a bottle and a story, did what I couldn't do with a badge and a gun. I walk the journalist to his horse, watch him ride off into the dark. Then I sit back down, pour the last of the whiskey into my glass. Tomorrow I'll tell him the rest. Tell him about the night Clara became a legend. But tonight, I'm thinking about courage. Real courage. The kind that shows up when you're terrified, when you have no good options, when all you have is your wits and your community and one dusty bottle of whiskey. The kind Clara had, the kind I didn't. I drink to that. To her. To the memory of the bravest person I ever knew. And to the night she showed me what the law really means. 1132. Orchestrated narrative escalation, twist revelation, and climactic setup. Orchestrated narrative escalation, twist revelation, and climactic setup. The journalist comes back the next evening, just as the sun starts its slide toward the mountains. He's got that look people get when a story's got its hooks in them, when they need to know how it ends. "You ready?" I ask. He nods, takes out his notebook, waits. I pour whiskey for both of us. This is a different bottle than last night. Not as good. But then, the best whiskey's gone, just like the best parts of my life. "I told you Clara had one day," I say. One day to prepare for men who'd threatened everything she loved. You want to know what she did with it? Yes. Then I'll tell you. But I'm warning you now, this is where it gets hard, where you see what I missed, what I should have known about her all along. I take a drink. Begin. Clara woke before dawn that second morning, but this time she didn't lie there listening to Sarah breathe. She got up, moved quiet through the dark. Downstairs, she lit a single lamp, pulled out the special bottle, John's bottle, and set it on the bar, looked at it in the lamplight. 20 years old. The label faded. Dust settled into every crease of the glass. She picked it up, turned it slow, watched the whiskey catch the light. This bottle had been waiting 20 years for a purpose, for the celebration that never came. Now it had one. Clara carried it to the back room, found an old cloth, started wiping away the dust, careful and deliberate, making it look even older, more mysterious, like something with a history. She thought about the story she'd tell, started building it in her mind, piece by piece. The traveling merchant, the strange warning, the curse that gave men what they deserved. It had to be believable. Had to have enough truth mixed with the lie that it could take root in frightened minds. But more than that, it had to buy her time. Time for her community to move into position. Time for the brothers to doubt themselves just enough. She worked the bottle until it looked right. Ancient. Ominous. Special. Then she put it back on the shelf, in the corner where lamplight barely reached, where it could wait like a loaded gun. Sarah came down around 6, found Clara making breakfast like it was any other morning. "You're up early," Sarah said. "Couldn't sleep." Clara cracked eggs into a pan, kept her hands busy so they wouldn't shake. "I need you to do something for me today." "What?" "Go to Maggie's. Stay there until I come get you." Sarah stopped, looked at her mother. "This is about those men." "Yes." "Mama, I'm not a child. If there's danger, that's exactly why you need to go." Clara turned from the stove, met her daughter's eyes. "Sarah, I have raised you for 17 years, kept you safe every single day. I need you to trust me one more time. Please." Something in Clara's voice made Sarah go quiet, made her see past the calm surface to the fear beneath. "You're really scared," Sarah said. "I'm terrified, but I have a plan, and I need you somewhere safe while I carry it out." "What kind of plan?" Clara almost smiled. "The kind your father would have appreciated. Now finish your breakfast, then pack a bag like you're staying at Maggie's a few days." "A few days?" "Probably just tonight. But better prepared than not." Sarah wanted to argue. Clara could see it. But something stopped her. Maybe she saw that her mother needed this, needed to know Sarah was protected so she could do what had to be done. "All right," Sarah said quietly. "I'll go to Maggie's." Clara pulled her daughter close, held her tight, breathed in the smell of her hair, tried not to think about all the things that could go wrong. "I love you," Clara whispered. "I love you too, Mama." After Sarah left, Clara stood alone in her saloon. She had maybe 12 hours to make sure tonight went the way she needed it to go. She started with Eli. Found him at the blacksmith shop, already working the forge. He looked up when she came in, saw her face, set down his hammer. "It's today," he said, not a question. "Tonight, they'll come tonight." Clara stepped closer, out of the sun's glare. "I need you to do something that might get you killed." Eli wiped his hands on his apron. "Name it." "When they come, when things get bad, and they will get bad, I need you and the others to be ready, but not too ready. You understand? Can't look like you're waiting for them. You want us there, but not obvious." "Exactly. Spread out in the saloon. Different tables. Rifles hidden but close. When I give the signal—" "What signal?" Clara thought about it. "When I pour myself a drink, when I raise my glass, that's when you move." Eli nodded. "How many men you need?" 5. 6 if you can, but men you trust. Men who won't run if it gets ugly." "I can get 6. Good men. Railroad workers mostly. Boys who owe you." That phrase stopped Clara. "Owe me?" Eli looked at her like she was being deliberately obtuse. "Clara, half this town owes you something. You really don't see it?" She didn't know what to say to that. Eli continued. Jake Morrison. You loaned him money when his wife was sick. Didn't ask for it back. Tom Chen. You gave his sister a job when nobody else would hire Chinese. Reverend Stone. You sheltered 3 women running from bad husbands, gave them a place to hide, no questions asked. Clara felt something shift in her chest. I was just helping. You were being the law, the real law, the kind that protects people. Eli stepped closer. So when you ask me to stand with you tonight, to risk my life, Clara, I'd do that anyway. But knowing it's you asking, knowing what you've done for this town, every man I bring will feel the same. Clara's eyes stung. She blinked it back. Thank you, Eli. Don't thank me yet. We haven't survived it. Next, Clara went to see Reverend Stone. Found him at the little church at the edge of town. He was sweeping the floor, preparing for Sunday services that might not happen if tonight went wrong. Clara, he said when she walked in, I've been expecting you. You know what I'm going to ask? You need the church's blessing for what you're planning, or maybe you need to confess before you do it. He set the broom aside. Which is it? Clara sat in the front pew. The wood was hard beneath her. Sunlight came through the plain glass windows. I'm going to lie to them, she said. The Harrison brothers. I'm going to tell them a story that isn't true. Make them believe something that doesn't exist. Is that a sin? Reverend Stone was quiet a moment. Then he sat beside her. There's a story in the Bible, he said, about Hebrew midwives in Egypt. Pharaoh ordered them to kill all the baby boys. They lied. Told Pharaoh the Hebrew women gave birth before they could arrive. They lied to protect the innocent, and God blessed them for it. So lying to protect people is acceptable? I think God cares more about the heart than the letter of the law. Your heart tonight will be protecting your daughter, your community. That's righteous, Clara, even if the method is unconventional. Clara felt some of the weight lift from her shoulders. Will you be there tonight? She asked. In the saloon? Wouldn't miss it. And Clara? He smiled. That story you're planning to tell, about the cursed whiskey. If you need me to corroborate it, add a detail or two. I can be very convincing about mysterious merchants and ancient warnings. Clara almost laughed. A preacher willing to lie for the greater good? A preacher willing to stand with his congregation when evil comes calling. There's a difference. The journalist interrupts me. Wait, so the whole town knew? They were all in on it? Not the whole town, I say. Clara told maybe 8 people what she was planning, but she didn't tell them everything. Couldn't, because she didn't know exactly how it would unfold. She just knew she needed people ready, needed them positioned, needed them willing to follow her lead when the moment came. But the cursed bottle story was something she'd make up on the spot. Oh, she had the general idea. But the details, those would come from the moment, from reading the brothers, from sensing what would work. I leaned back in my chair. That's what made Clara dangerous. She could improvise, could read people, could turn a lie into something that felt true. The journalist writes furiously. I give him a moment, then continue. By afternoon, Clara's saloon had a strange energy. Men came in earlier than usual, took tables spread throughout the room, ordered coffee, not whiskey. They were waiting without seeming to wait. Clara saw rifles hidden under coats, saw the way they positioned themselves with clear lines of sight to the door, saw Eli give her a small nod. They were ready. Maggie Chen came by around 4, brought a basket of bread, set it on the bar. Sarah's safe at my place, she said quietly. I'll keep her there as long as needed. Thank you. Clara. Maggie hesitated. Those men, they're not just after free whiskey. They're going to hurt you if they can. You know that. I know. And you're still doing this? Not running? Clara looked around her saloon, at the tables her husband had built, at the bar she'd polished for 15 years, at the community gathering to protect her. Where would I run to? Clara asked. This is my home. These are my people. I'm not giving that up because 3 men think fear is stronger than what we've built here. Maggie nodded, touched Clara's hand. Your husband would be proud. After she left, Clara stood alone behind the bar. She thought about John, about the day they'd bought this bottle of whiskey. They'd been so young, so certain about the future. She picked up the bottle now, held it up to the fading light. "I'm going to use this to save our daughter," she whispered to the glass. "To John's memory. I'm going to use it to save everything we built. I hope that counts as something worth celebrating." The whiskey glowed amber in the sunlight. Clara set it down, positioned it just right on the shelf. Then she waited for the sun to set. "I need to tell you something," I say to the journalist. "Something I learned later. Something that explains why Clara could do what she did that night." He looks up, waits. 5 years before, there was a man named Dutch Kelly. Mean drunk. Used to beat his wife. Sheriff then was a coward, wouldn't do anything about it. So you know what Clara did? I pause. Take a drink. She waited until Dutch came into her saloon one night. Waited until he was 2 drinks in. Then she poured him a 3rd glass and told him it was poisoned. Told him she'd slipped something in it. Told him he had 2 choices. Drink it and die, or leave town and never come back. Was it really poisoned? Hell no, it was whiskey. Just whiskey. But she said it so calm, so certain, that Dutch believed her. Believed it absolutely. He rode out that night. Never came back. His wife went on to have a good life. So she'd done this before. The psychological warfare. Once, on one drunk. This was different. This was 3 professional criminals who'd killed before. But the principle was the same. Make them believe. Make the story real enough that their own fear does the work. I set down my glass. That's what Clara understood that I never did. People believe what they're afraid to test. Tell a scared man his drink is poisoned, he won't call your bluff. Tell him it's cursed, same thing. The lie becomes truth because nobody wants to prove it's not. The sun touched the mountains. Clara lit the lamps in the saloon. 8 men were scattered at tables. Reverend Stone sat near the window. Eli by the door. The others positioned careful and casual. They looked like a normal evening crowd, but Clara could see the tension in their shoulders, could see hands near hidden weapons. She arranged glasses on the bar, cleaned ones that were already clean, kept her hands busy. Sarah was safe. The men were ready. The bottle waited on its shelf. Now all that remained was the waiting. Clara thought about courage, about what it really meant. It wasn't the absence of fear. It wasn't even acting despite fear. It was this terrible waiting, knowing danger was coming, choosing to stand anyway. Her hands trembled as she polished a glass. Outside, the street was empty, too empty, like the town was holding its breath. Then she saw them, 3 riders, coming up the street in the dying light, taking their time. They knew she'd be waiting, knew she had nowhere to run. They were coming to collect what they thought she owed them. Clara set down the glass, wiped her hands on her apron, looked at the bottle on the shelf one more time. "All right, John," she whispered. "Let's see if our wedding whiskey can save our daughter's life." The riders stopped outside. She heard boots on the porch. Eli caught her eye, gave her a tiny nod. "Ready." Reverend Stone bowed his head. Praying, maybe. Or just preparing. The other men shifted in their seats, hands moving closer to hidden rifles. Clara took a breath, let it out slow. The door swung open. Silas Harrison walked in first, his brothers behind him. They looked around at the occupied tables, at the men who'd gone silent, watching. But this time they didn't seem surprised, just amused. "Evening, ma'am," Silas said. "Brought some friends, I see. That's good. They can watch what happens when you refuse to cooperate." He walked to the bar, his brothers fanned out. Clara noticed something she'd missed last night. The oldest brother, Jacob, had his hand on his gun, not threatening yet, just ready. The youngest, Danny, was nervous, eyes darting, feeding off his brother's confidence but not feeling it himself. And Silas was watching her, calculating, trying to figure out if she'd break easy or if this would take violence. "You thought about our offer?" Silas asked. "I did." "And?" Clara met his eyes. "I thought about it, and I decided you're right." That surprised him. His eyebrows went up. "Right how?" "You deserve something special, something more than ordinary whiskey." She turned to the shelf, reached for the bottle, Let me get you something I've been saving." She lifted down the dusty bottle, set it on the bar between them. Silas looked at it, at the faded label, the years of dust. "Now that," he said slowly, "looks worth drinking." Clara's heart was hammering, but her voice stayed steady. "This particular bottle," she said, "has a story." "I don't want stories. I want whiskey." "You'll get both." Clara pulled out 3 glasses. "My husband bought this the day we got married, 20 years ago. He said we'd drink it together when we built something worth celebrating." She started to pour, slow, letting the amber liquid catch the lamplight. "But he died before that day came," she continued. "After he passed, I discovered something interesting about this whiskey." The brothers watched the liquid rising in the glasses. "The man who sold it to him was a traveling merchant, strange fellow, had eyes that looked through you. He told my husband this bottle was special, said it had a way of giving people exactly what they deserved." Clara filled the first glass to the rim, started on the second. Reverend Stone spoke up from his table right on cue. "I remember that merchant. Odd man. Left town the next day, never saw him again." Clara nodded. "He told John one more thing before he left. He said, 'Whoever drinks from this bottle drinks to their fate. Good men find fortune. Bad men find something else entirely.'" She filled the third glass. Silas was watching her now, really watching, trying to figure if this was a game or a warning or something else. "Superstitious nonsense," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Clara poured herself a glass, smaller than theirs. "Maybe, but I'm willing to drink to it. Are you?" She raised her glass. That was the signal. Around the room, men shifted, chairs scraped, the smallest movements, but Silas caught them, saw something change. His hand moved toward his gun. "I wouldn't," Eli said quietly from behind him. Silas turned, saw Eli standing, saw the rifle in his hands, saw 5 other men standing too, all armed, all aimed. The room had transformed in seconds, from a casual gathering to a trap. Jacob's hand tightened on his gun, but he didn't draw, couldn't, not with 6 rifles pointed at him. Danny looked at his brothers, looked at the guns. His face went pale. Silas looked back at Clara, at the glass in her hand, at the bottle on the bar. "You set us up," he said. "No," Clara said calmly. "I poured you whiskey and told you a story. You chose to hear a threat. You chose to reach for your gun. That's on you." "You think these men will shoot? Really shoot?" "I think you threatened my daughter." Clara's voice went cold. "I think you came into my town thinking you could take what you wanted because we didn't have a sheriff. But you were wrong. We don't need a sheriff. We have each other." She set down her glass, hadn't drunk from it, didn't need to. "So here's what happens next," she said. "You can drink that whiskey. Take what you came for, but know that this whole room is watching. Know that if anything happens to me, to my daughter, to anyone in this town, there's nowhere you can run that someone won't remember, won't hunt you, won't make you pay." "Or," Silas asked, "or you can leave that whiskey sitting there, walk out, right away, find another town that's easier prey." The silence stretched. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, could see the calculation in Silas's eyes. This was the moment, the choice, violence or retreat, death or survival. "Come on, Silas," Danny whispered. "Let's just go. This ain't worth it." "Shut up," Silas hissed. But Clara saw the crack, saw the doubt spreading. "Your brother's smarter than you," she said to Silas. "He sees the truth. You came for easy money, found something harder. That's not fate. That's just bad planning." Silas's hand hovered near his gun. Eli cocked his rifle. The sound was loud in the silent room. "Your choice," Clara said quietly, "but choose quick. My friends are getting nervous, and nervous men with rifles make mistakes." I stopped talking. The journalist is staring at me. "What happened?" he asks. "Did they draw? Did someone shoot?" "Tomorrow," I say. "I'll tell you tomorrow, because what happened next?" That's where Clara showed what she really was. That's where the curse became real in a way nobody expected. That's where I learned why I never deserved to wear that badge. But tomorrow, I stand. My knees ache, old age settling in for the night. Some stories you can't rush. Some truths you need to sit with before you can speak them. The journalist looks frustrated, but he leaves. I sit back down. Pour the last of tonight's whiskey. Tomorrow I'll tell him about the moment Silas Harrison's hand moved toward his gun, about what Clara said that stopped him, about how 3 dangerous men rode out of Silver Creek without firing a shot, about how a woman with nothing but words defeated men with weapons. But tonight, I'm just remembering her face in that moment. The lamplight catching her eyes, the steady set of her jaw. She was terrified. I know that now. But she looked like justice itself, and that made all the difference. The journalist arrives early tonight. The sun's still an hour from setting. He's eager. Young men always are when a story's reaching its end. "You left me hanging," he says. Settling into his chair, I pour whiskey for us both. This is the last bottle. After tonight, I'll have told it all. Spoken the truth I've carried for 15 years. I left you where Clara left those 3 brothers, I say, at the moment of choice, violence or wisdom, death or life. So what happened? I take a drink. Let the whiskey warm me. Then I go back to that saloon, to the lamplight and the silence and the moment that changed everything. Silas Harrison's hand was an inch from his gun. 6 rifles were pointed at him and his brothers. The men holding them weren't professional gunfighters, but they were determined. Clara could see it in their faces. They'd shoot if they had to. The question was, would they have to? Clara kept her eyes on Silas, kept her voice calm. "You're thinking you can draw fast enough," she said. "Maybe you can. Maybe you get me. Maybe you get Eli. But those other 4 men, they'll cut you down before you take a second breath. Is that how you want this to end?" Silas's jaw was tight, his pride warring with his survival instinct. "We came here for what's owed," he said. "Nothing's owed. You came to steal, to intimidate, to take what you didn't earn." Clara picked up one of the whiskey glasses. "But I'm still offering you this drink, still offering you the choice. Drink and accept what comes, or walk away and find another life." "You think your curse is real?" Silas's voice was mocking, but Clara heard the uncertainty underneath. "I think you do," she said quietly. "I think you heard that story and something in you recognized the truth, that we get what we deserve in this world, that bad deeds catch up eventually, that fate has a long memory." She held out the glass to him. "So drink," she said. "If you believe you deserve good fortune, if you believe you're a good man, drink." Silas stared at the glass, at the amber liquid catching lamplight. His hand moved away from his gun, reached for the glass instead. He lifted it, brought it close to his lips. The whole room held its breath. Then Danny spoke, his voice shaking. "Silas, don't. Please." Silas stopped, glass an inch from his mouth. "It's just whiskey," he said. But he didn't drink. "Then drink it," Clara said. The seconds stretched, became minutes, became an eternity of hesitation. Finally, Silas set the glass down, pushed it away. "We're leaving," he said. Jacob tensed. "Silas, we're leaving." Silas looked at Clara. Something had changed in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition of something he didn't want to face. "This town ain't worth it." "Smart choice," Eli said. His rifle didn't move. Silas stepped back from the bar. His brothers followed, all 3 of them moving slow, hands visible, nobody reaching for weapons. At the door, Silas paused, looked back at Clara. "That merchant," he said. "The one who sold the bottle, was he real?" Clara held his gaze. "Does it matter? I want to know if you cursed us, or if we cursed ourselves." Clara was quiet a moment. Then she said, "I think you've been cursed for a long time, by anger, by believing the world owes you something, by choosing the easy path instead of the right one. I didn't curse you. You did that yourselves." Silas's face went hard, but he didn't argue. "If we ever see you again," Jacob started. "You won't," Clara interrupted, "because smart men know when they've lost, and you've lost. Tonight, tomorrow. Every night you keep choosing to be what you are instead of what you could be." She picked up the glass Silas had refused, looked at it. "This is just whiskey," she said. 20 years old, probably the best you'd ever taste, but you couldn't drink it because somewhere in your heart you knew what you deserve. And it isn't good whiskey. It isn't peace. It's the fear you're feeling right now, the knowledge that every town you ride into might be the one where your luck runs out. She poured the whiskey back into the bottle, slow and deliberate. "So go," she said. "Ride out. Find another town. But know this. Someday you'll ride into a place where the people won't be as kind as us, where they won't give you a choice, and that'll be your real curse catching up." Silas turned, walked out into the night. His brothers followed. Nobody in the saloon moved until they heard hoofbeats, fast hoofbeats, riding hard away from Silver Creek. Then Eli lowered his rifle. The others did the same. Someone laughed. Nervous relief spilling out, someone else started talking. The tension broke like a fever. Clara stood behind her bar, hands gripping the wood to keep them from shaking. Reverend Stone approached. "Clara, that was terrifying," she finished. "I was going to say brilliant, but yes, also terrifying," he smiled. "The way you made them believe, made the story real. I've been preaching 20 years and never seen anyone command belief like that. It was just words, Reverend. Words are powerful things, especially from someone people trust." He touched her shoulder. "Your husband would be proud." After the men left, after the saloon emptied, Clara sat alone at the bar. She picked up the bottle, her wedding whiskey, still mostly full, still waiting for a celebration. She poured herself a small glass, raised it to the empty room. "To you, John," she whispered. "To the life we didn't get, to the daughter we did, to everything we built that's still standing." She drank. The whiskey was smooth. 20 years had treated it well. It tasted like victory and grief, and the bitter knowledge that she'd have to do this again someday, face down evil, protect what mattered, because that's what strength was, not one moment of courage, but the willingness to be courageous again, and again, for as long as you drew breath. "That's when I rode back into town," I tell the journalist, 2 days later, expecting everything to be normal, expecting nobody to know what a failure I was. "What did you find?" I finished my whiskey, set the glass down harder than I meant to. "I found a town that didn't need me anymore, maybe never had." I came back to Silver Creek on a Tuesday morning. The cattle thief reports had been false, of course. I'd tracked them to their source, found old tracks going in circles, found evidence of a camp where someone had waited, watching to make sure I really left. I'd been played, maneuvered like a chess piece. I rode in angry, ashamed, worried about what I'd find. The town looked normal. Too normal. People going about their business. No bodies in the street, no burned buildings, no signs of trouble. I went to Clara's saloon first, found her behind the bar serving coffee to Eli Cooper and 3 railroad workers. She looked tired, but alive, whole. "Thomas," she said when she saw me, "you're back." "What happened?" I asked. "Maggie said there were 3 men, said they threatened you." "They did." Clara poured me coffee without asking. "And they left. It's handled." "Handled how?" She told me. The whole story, the confrontation, the whiskey, the story about the curse, the moment they rode out without violence. I listened, felt something crumble inside me with every word. "I should have been here," I said when she finished. "Would it have changed anything?" Clara asked gently. "Would you have faced them down without guns? Or would there be 3 bodies to bury and grief to carry?" "I would have protected you. That was my job. Your job was to keep the peace. I kept the peace, Thomas. Different method, same result. But I couldn't accept that. Couldn't accept that I'd failed in the one thing that mattered. I spent the next week investigating, tracking down the man who'd brought the false cattle thief reports. Found him in a town 40 miles east. Paid him $20 to tell the truth. He'd been hired by a man matching Silas Harrison's description. Paid to get the sheriff out of Silver Creek for 3 days minimum. The whole thing had been planned. I'd been removed like an obstacle. Cleared from the board so they could make their move. When I brought this information to Clara, she just nodded. "I suspected as much." "You knew, and you didn't tell me?" "What good would it do? Make you feel worse?" Thomas, you're a good man, a good sheriff. But you can't be everywhere, can't stop every bad thing from happening. That's not failure. That's just being human. I promised John. John's dead. Her voice was firm but not unkind. He's been dead 10 years. You kept your promise the best you could, but I don't need protecting, Thomas. I never did. I needed a community that would stand with me, and I have that. I looked at her, at this woman who'd faced down 3 armed men with nothing but a story and steel nerves, at this woman who'd been protecting the town while I carried a badge and thought that made me the law. You should have my star, I said. Clara smiled, sad and knowing. Stars don't make lawmen, Thomas. Hearts do. And your heart's in the right place. It's just pointed at the wrong kind of strength. 2 months later, I turned in my badge. Told the town council I was retiring. Didn't give a reason. Didn't need to. They knew. Clara came to see me the day before I left Silver Creek, for good. You don't have to go, she said. Yes, I do. Every time I walk this street, I'll remember the night I wasn't here, the night I broke my promise. Thomas, she took my hand. You kept your promise every other day for 10 years. One failure doesn't erase all that, and it wasn't even a failure. It was just life, messy and complicated and not what we planned. She handed me something, the bottle, the wedding whiskey. I can't take that, I said. Yes, you can. It's just whiskey, Thomas. Good whiskey, but just whiskey. The curse was a story. The magic was people believing. The strength was community. The bottle's just glass and liquid. Then why give it to me? So you remember that stories matter, that words can be weapons, that the law isn't what you carry. It's what you believe. She squeezed my hand. And so you remember that you were here for us, for 10 years. That counts for something. I took the bottle, left the next morning. Didn't see Clara again for 12 years. Wait, the journalist says. 12 years? You didn't go back? No, I say. I was a coward, couldn't face what I'd lost, couldn't face her. So I moved away, took odd jobs, tried to forget. And then? Then I got a letter from Eli Cooper telling me Clara was dead. She died in the winter of 1896. Pneumonia. It came fast, took her in 3 days. I rode back for the funeral. First time I'd seen Silver Creek in over a decade. The town had grown. More buildings, more people. The railroad had expanded. Prosperity had come, like Clara always said it would. But her saloon stood the same, weathered, sturdy, still the heart of everything. Sarah met me at the church. She was 29 now, a woman. She'd gone to Denver, become a costume designer like she wanted, but she'd come home when her mother got sick, been there at the end. She talked about you, Sarah told me. Near the end, said to tell you that you kept your promise, that you were there when she needed you, all the times that mattered. I wasn't there the night the Harrison brothers came. No, but you were there the 100 other times, the 1,000 quiet days, the years of just being present. She said that mattered more. The funeral was standing room only. Seemed like half of Colorado had come, all these people whose lives Clara had touched, had helped, had protected. Eli spoke, told the story of how Clara had saved his marriage. Maggie told about the loan that saved her store. Reverend Stone talked about the women Clara had sheltered, the men she'd mediated for, the community she'd built. I sat in the back, listened to story after story, realized I'd only known a fraction of what Clara had done. She'd been the law in Silver Creek for 15 years, the real law, the kind that prevented violence instead of just responding to it. And I'd worn the badge thinking that made me important. After the service, I visited her grave, stood there in the cold, looking at fresh-turned earth. I'm sorry, I said to the ground. Sorry I wasn't there that night. Sorry I left. Sorry I was too ashamed to come back and tell you how much you mattered. The wind blew cold across the cemetery, carried snow from the mountains. But I'll tell your story now, I said. I'll make sure people know, not the legend, the truth, about the woman who carried the law better than any star-wearing sheriff ever could. I kept that promise. This one I kept. The journalist has stopped writing. He's just listening now. The sun's almost gone. The mountains are purple shadows against a darkening sky. What happened to the Harrison brothers? He asks. Don't know. Never heard from them again. Maybe they found another path. Maybe they kept riding until their luck ran out. Either way, they learned something that night in Clara's saloon. What? That courage isn't always loud. That strength isn't always obvious. That the most dangerous person in a room might be the quiet one who knows exactly what they're capable of. I stand, walk to the edge of the porch, look at the stars coming out. You asked me 2 nights ago about the law, I say, about what it means on the frontier. I told you I'd tell you Clara's story, that it would answer your question. It did. No, not yet. I turn to face him, because the last part, the most important part, is what I learned. What took me 15 years to understand. The journalist waits. The law isn't the star on your chest, I say. It's not the gun on your hip. It's not the badge that gives you authority or the title that makes people listen. The law is standing up when you're terrified. Protecting what matters even when nobody's watching. Being the person your community can trust to do right, even when wrong, is easier. I pick up Clara's bottle from the table beside me. It's almost empty now. 3 nights of storytelling have taken their toll. Clara Donnelly never wore a badge, I say. Never carried a gun into battle. Never arrested a criminal or enforced a statute. But she was the law in Silver Creek for 15 years. The real law. The kind that makes a place worth living in. I pour the last of the whiskey into 2 glasses. Hand one to the journalist. I wore a badge for 18 years, I say, and I was never half the lawman Clara was in her worst moment. That's what I learned the night I camped under stars 60 miles away while she faced down evil with nothing but words and courage. The journalist raises his glass. To Clara Donnelly, to Clara, I agree, and to the law she carried, the law we all should carry, the law of community, of courage, of standing together when the world gets dark. We drink. The whiskey is smooth, 20 years old, the best I've ever tasted, just like Clara said. After the journalist leaves, I sit alone on my porch. The night is full dark now, stars scattered across the sky like silver dust. I think about Clara, about the last thing Sarah told me at the funeral. Mama said to give you a message, Sarah had said. She said, tell Thomas he was a good sheriff, better than he knows, and that the night the Harrison brothers came wasn't his failure. It was my victory. Tell him to stop carrying that guilt. It's too heavy, and it was never his to carry. I'd cried then, first time in 20 years, stood there in the snow outside the church and wept, because Clara was right. I'd been carrying guilt that wasn't mine. Failure that was really someone else's triumph. I'd turned her greatest moment into my worst shame. But tonight, I've finally let it go. Told the story the way it should be told, with Clara at the center, the hero, the law. I stand, go inside, come back with a pen and paper. I write it all down. Everything I told the journalist and more. The whole truth. 3 nights of story condensed into words that will last. When I finish, I seal it in an envelope, address it to Sarah Donnelly, include a note. Your mother's real story. Make sure they remember her right. Tomorrow I'll mail it, make sure the legend dies and the truth lives. But tonight, I sit on this porch, drink the last drops from Clara's wedding whiskey, watch the stars turn overhead. I'm 68 years old, lived a long life, made my share of mistakes, wore a badge once and thought that made me someone important. But the most important thing I ever did was keep a promise to a dying man. Not perfectly, not even well sometimes, but as best I could. And the most important thing I learned was from the woman I promised to protect. That real strength is quiet. Real courage is ordinary. Real law is carried in the heart, not on the chest. Clara Donnelly taught me that, and I'll carry that lesson to my own grave. The wind picks up, carries the smell of sage and distant rain. The mountains stand dark against the stars. This land that's older than any of us. That'll be here long after we're all dust. Out there somewhere, maybe the Harrison brothers are still riding, still running from the curse they put on themselves, still trying to outrun the truth Clara showed them in her saloon that night. Or maybe they learned. Maybe they found another path. Maybe they're sitting on their own porches, telling their own stories about the night they met a woman stronger than any man they'd known. I hope so. I hope Clara's words stayed with them, changed them, gave them a chance at something better. Because that's what real law does. It doesn't just punish, it transforms. It shows people what they could be if they chose different. Clara knew that, lived it, died knowing she'd made a difference. I raise my empty glass to the empty chair beside me, the one where Clara would sit if she were here, if the world were kinder, if we got more time. To you, Clara, I say to the night, to the stars, to the memory that lives in my heart. To the finest lawman I ever knew, may your story outlast all the legends. May your truth shine brighter than any badge ever could. The stars don't answer. They never do. But I feel something settle in my chest. Something that's been tight for 15 years, finally letting go. Peace, maybe. Or just acceptance. The knowledge that I've finally told the truth, finally honored her the way she deserved. I stand. My knees ache, my back protests. Old age catching up like it does to us all, but my heart's lighter than it's been in years. I go inside, leave the porch to the night, to the wind, to the mountains that keep their own counsel. Tomorrow the sun will rise. Tomorrow I'll wake and live another day. Tomorrow the world will keep turning like it always has. But tonight I've done what I needed to do. I've told Clara's story, the real one. The one about a woman who carried the law better than any sheriff. The one about courage that looked like calm, strength that sounded like stories, victory that came from community, not guns. The one about the night 3 dangerous men rode into Silver Creek and met something more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. A woman who refused to be afraid. And that's the truth. That's the law. That's the legacy Clara Donnelly left behind. Not a legend, not a myth, just the simple, powerful truth. That real courage is standing up when you're terrified. Real strength is protecting what matters. Real law is carried in the heart, not on the chest. I learned that from Clara, and now I've passed it on. My promise to a dead man, finally kept. My debt to a brave woman, finally paid. The stars turn overhead. The wind whispers through the pines. The world keeps its rhythm. And somewhere, I like to think, Clara Donnelly is smiling, knowing her story's been told right, knowing she's finally been remembered for what she really was, not a saloon owner, not a widow, not a victim who got lucky, but the law, the real law, the kind that matters most. The end.